Zara, I want to thank you for coming today to our European headquarters here in Waterloo. And really excited to be able to speak to you today about your accomplishment. My goodness, flying around the world, being the first woman to do so, or person for that matter, in an ultralight, and of course, the youngest woman in the world to do that. Must have had a lot of response from the press and from media and people around the world. How did you deal with that?
Thank you for having me. And the support was incredible flying around the world. I couldn't have done it without it, actually. There were some points whenever I was feeling a bit down, I just go through my Facebook comments or Instagram comments and see people there, like random strangers who never met me, cheering me on and believing in me. So that was really, really cool. And it really helped.
And I mean, when you wake up in the morning a year or two ago and you watch CNN or BBC and suddenly now you're being interviewed by these people you've actually seen before, what was that like?
It was very strange to kind of see yourself on TV.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. But yeah, you get used to it a little bit, and then you try and there's some media training involved, which is pretty interesting. Try and how you're supposed to answer questions, try and keep it interesting, try and keep it quick. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool. It was really interesting, a perspective of it. Something I wasn't expecting when I started training for this trip was having to train to talk to cameras as well.
Yeah, you thought maybe just about flying a plane, right? And do that type of thing. Now you have to figure out how to speak to the media as well.
Exactly, yeah. So the media thing was really for sponsorship. I was hoping to get some press to attract more sponsorship to actually fund my trip around the world. And so it was a part of that.
So before you actually took off, did you have all the funding in line, or did you actually pick up some that you needed along the way?
So before I took off, thankfully I had all the sponsorship that I needed. It took me a while to get it and to get the funding. I had a few additional sponsorship as I went along, but not that many, mm-hmm. and I didn't need them. So it was great to be able to work with the core companies who helped me from the beginning.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned this 5% of women, commercial pilots are actually women, right? And I know every time I step on a plane, I tend to look across to see who's actually flying the plane. I can remember maybe 5 or 6 times that there were actually women in the left seats, right? How do you think that your journey has inspired young women to look for roles in STEM or commercial flying and things like that?
I'm just hoping to be kind of someone that they can look at and think, oh, that's another girl flying too. So growing up, I never saw other girls flying, never saw other women flying. And so my trip really was to show, look, I'm a girl, I'm flying around the world, you're not the only one, to whichever girl might be interested in aviation. And sometimes I'd receive messages from girls and boys saying, Zara, what I think you're doing is super cool. And I actually started flying because of it. And so receiving these messages was really, really nice, and it's really fun. And it was great because at least I had a small positive effect on some people. Yeah,
I think I heard you saying earlier that when you had something that happened well, during your flight, it was, very good for women in general, more for you, right? But then if you made a mistake, it was women in general, they shouldn't be flying or whatever, right? Something like that.
Right, so this was online. So in person, thankfully, people were very, very supportive and incredible. Online, I did get a lot more criticism based on my gender, mm-hmm. Which resulted in that. So if I made a mistake, then it would be because of my gender rather than because of who I am as a person. But if I did something right, then it was because of who I am as a person rather than my gender, which was slightly frustrating because then you can't make mistakes, which obviously every person makes mistakes.
Absolutely. So. What were some of your mistakes that you made while you were flying?
I'd make mistakes all the time. I mean, sometimes it's making a decision that turns out not to be the safest decision. Sometimes it's taking off when probably you shouldn't have taken off, when you weren't mentally in the right mindset, or maybe the weather wasn't quite as good as it should have been. Thankfully, it always turned out okay, right? I was always able to get to my destination, get somewhere on the ground safely. It wasn't always my destination, but yeah, then you learn from those mistakes, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah. When it comes to inspiring women to get into STEM studies of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, what would be your recommendation to young women wanting to consider those fields?
I think what's really important is ignoring social norms for a little bit. growing up, I really struggled with that, with the idea that I was the only girl in my friendship group who was interested in aviation, interested in engineering, mathematics. And when you're 13, 14 years old, the only thing you want in life is to fit in with your friends. And when you don't, then that's really tough, especially at that age. And so I think it's really important for girls and boys, if they're interested in a field where they stand out, it's important to kind of stick with it for a little bit as your confidence grows. And then you'll realize later on that social norms are just nonsense and who cares about them anyway, and just do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I remember you saying breaking things up into chunks, right? So getting past that first hurdle, maybe eventually thinking about joining a science degree, and then getting past your first class, and then you're past for your first year,
right.
and so forth.
Getting a degree in engineering does sound really intimidating when you think about it like that. But the trick is really to just kind of take it one small step at a time. First it's this one class, then tomorrow you have the next class, and then you might have a test at the end of the week, and you just look at it like that, like I just have to pass this one test at the end of the week. And then once that's done, you look at the next test the following week. And then slowly but surely you'll notice that progresses to a degree. And then that makes it a lot easier to kind of wrap your head around.
Yeah, that's how you probably approached your flight around the world, right?
That's right, yeah. So thinking about flying around the world, just that is very scary and intimidating. I'm going to fly around the world. Ooh, scary, okay. So instead what I would do is I'd think about each leg, each flight individually. So today I'm flying from Belgium to England, or today I'm flying from New York to Florida, whatever it was. Because that sounds a lot more realistic than, well, I'm flying across North America, or I'm flying around the world.
Yeah, I bet. So Zara, when you're thinking about your flight around the world, and you must have some wonderful memories of people and places that you visited, what are some of those thoughts that you may want to share with us?
There were places that I loved. Alaska, one of the most amazing, beautiful places on this planet. Very remote, but the people were incredible, and I still remember kind of flying across. At the time it was still relatively warm, so no snow, but flying across the tundra with mountains in the distance and just otherwise flat. And then for hundreds of miles, it was just the same thing. And there were no cities, there were no towns, there were no roads. And it was one of those sights that you kind of just have to slowly digest. It was the same with Siberia. It was so cold at that time of year, the ocean was frozen. And so then it was just flat landscape with a few hills here and there, but white. There were no trees or anything, so just white, and again, no roads, no houses, no nothing. And that's when you appreciate just how remote some places still are, and how beautiful our planet is.
You were saying before something about the fact that you've had a chance to travel in your life, and then you were landing in communities that the only way out was by airplane, right? And so that meant they were there forever, it seems.
That's right. It was very strange coming from Belgium that's so densely populated, and suddenly landing in a town that is limited completely by climate. It was very cold usually in the winter in those places, and also by travel. It was tough because those children sometimes, when they were growing up, even if they wanted to, go to the city and maybe get a better or different job, they didn't necessarily have the means to actually get, the plane ticket out, which was really interesting because coming from Belgium, coming from Brussels, travel for me was never an issue. I can walk an hour, and I've got plenty of opportunities within that hour. So.
But someone in Nome, Alaska, or
right, they might
Ion,
struggle a bit more. Yeah.
Siberia is a different story.
Yeah.
You were stuck there for like 3 weeks, right? And you met a lady who was running a small Thai restaurant, was it?
Kind of. So I was stuck in Ion for 3 weeks, a small town in Russia, and this was a Thai woman who was actually teaching English in the local village. It was too small for restaurants. There are no restaurants there. Okay. And it was 800 people, and she was kind of the only one who spoke English, kind of. and she'd make me Thai food, which is really nice.
Okay. But you didn't choose to land there. That was one of your fallback airports that in the event you couldn't go any further because of weather, you would go back to some other airport, and it happened to be this
right.
one.
So I was flying along, and I was actually heading somewhere else. And then the weather worsened, so I had to land elsewhere, and that happened to be the closest airfield. So I landed there, and because of poor weather, I ended up being stuck there for 3 weeks, which is a really long time because it's pretty cold there.
Yeah, I imagine. My goodness. And we talk about the scary moments. You've been asked that question 1,000 times. The lightning strikes over Singapore, or the smoky wildfires in California, or just the wind. One thing, when I saw you take off and when I saw you come and land, your plane moves around a lot, and that's in clear air. I can't imagine when you talk about thermals that you're bouncing all over. What's that like?
It can be very uncomfortable. I had some pretty severe turbulence in some places that were very uncomfortable, and I hit my head a couple times.
Oh, really?
But you get used to it, and the plane is very good. The plane can handle it, and so if the plane can handle it, then I can handle it, and that's kind of how I think about things. And yeah, especially on landing, when the wind was strong, it was a pretty bumpy approach. And there were a few times when I had to go around during my trip, and that means basically you're coming into land, it's not looking good, so you basically climb again, and you go around and you try again. I had to do that a few times in some airports. And yeah, it's an adventure.
And flying into massive airports in such a small little plane in New York and in Singapore, right? That must have been exciting.
It was incredible. I landed at JFK, a really special opportunity. And it was very strange. I think that was the longest runway I've ever landed on. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you think this adventure has prepared you for your future adventures? You talked about your studies as an engineer, perhaps. You talked about eventually wanting to be an astronaut. So what do you think that this has helped you in order to be successful in these new challenges?
So I've learned to kind of make better decisions, I think, to not let emotions dictate those decisions either. It's very important when you're flying to not panic and to kind of stay composed and figure things out and not make stupid decisions because it could, endanger your life. And so I think that's helped me a lot in the future, is to really kind of, before you make a big decision, to kind of pause. Just pause and think. Whether it's a minute, 5 minutes, a few days for some decision, whatever it is, make sure not to just impulsively make a decision and maybe do something silly.
Yeah, because it could, like you say, it could change your life in a negative way, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
So Zara, you spent some time with Dr. J, our managing director in Coimbatore. You met a bunch of our leadership there. Can you give us an idea of what that was like for you?
It was really cool. I loved landing. That was my first landing in India, first time in India. And it was great being able to meet the team, being able to thank Dr. J in person for sponsoring as well. And have had the most amazing Indian food that evening. It's a shame I couldn't stay longer. I would have loved to. And I'm looking forward to hopefully one day going back and seeing the algae school as well.
So Zara, I've done all the talking here as far as questions are concerned. Did you have anything you wanted to ask me? Yeah,
sure. So it was seeing algae in person was really cool in India. So you guys are basically like manufacturing equipment.
Yeah. So we do manufacture compressors, of course, but the machines we use to do that aren't always the right machines for our needs. So sometimes we go in and make some pretty dramatic changes to them. So they actually become our own technology. And that's what we've done on our milling and grinding machines.
Okay.
So
cool.
they have much quicker setup times, and they're meeting the precision grinding and milling requirements that we have. So yeah, we've actually had to do that ourselves. And that makes us unique in the industry of actually doing this. Not only that, but we also built our own foundry. We have a foundry that makes our castings for us, and not many compressor companies actually do that. So we make our foundries. Why? Because we needed a certain level of quality for compressors that we couldn't find in the market, so we built our own foundry.
Nice.
Yeah. So where are you off to next?
My next big thing will be getting a degree at university. Hopefully not quite as dangerous as flying around the world, but it should be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. All right, Zara, well, we want to thank you for taking us with you on your journey. It was a pleasure and an honor to be part of it. And we're also very proud of your accomplishment. And we look forward to hearing great things about your future.
Thank you very much. That's very kind.
Thank you.
Thank you.